Hey guys, Metal Jesus here. Now you know that I love the Vita. It's a really cool handheld that unfortunately just didn't get a lot of love from Sony in North America. But thankfully publishers like Limited Run Games picked up the slack and published a bunch of really cool games on the system. So in this video I'm going to show you the first 50 releases that Limited Run put out on the Vita, plus a couple extras. Let's take a look. Alright guys, I'm going to go fairly quickly through all of these because we have so many to get through, and it's not really designed to be an in-depth review of each of these games. It's simply designed to give you an idea what they've actually released. And the first game that Limited Run did a physical release is their own. They made Breach and Clear, and actually started the company because, well, it was a downloadable only game and they wanted to preserve it forever, so they ended up creating the company and publishing Breach and Clear. This is a turn-based strategy game, and it just happens to be one of the rare and more expensive games now on the Vita. The second game they released also happens to be their own. So another game that they made that they wanted to make a physical version of it. That of course is Saturday Morning RPG, an old school RPG designed to be a throwback to everyone who grew up in the 80s. The next game that they released, the third one, is called Oddworld New and Tasty. This is going to be very familiar to a lot of you guys. It's a platformer. It's also a remake of the original Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. Most of us played this back on the PlayStation 1, but here it is in physical form on the Vita. Here is Futuridium EP Deluxe. This is a 3D shooter that's kind of unlike any other I've played, where you just basically go forwards and back trying to shoot out your targets or your objects. It's actually pretty cool. I like it a lot. Here's another great title. I like this game an awful lot. It's called Xeodrifter on the Vita. This is a Metroid-style, Metroidvania, Castlevania sort of thing. You guys get the idea here. But of course, it has a great art style. It's, like I said, it's one of the more fun games that I played. I originally played this on the 3DS, but to have the physical version on the Vita is very cool. Octodad, Dadliest Catch. Oh boy, so I've talked about this kind of game before. This is a physics-based puzzle game where you basically just go around with really funky physics, kind of struggling with that to try to solve puzzles and get through the platform or the level. Not my favorite style of game, but I know a lot of people love these. Here is Söldner-X 2 Final Prototype. Say that 3 times fast. But this is an old school style shoot 'em up. As you can see here, the graphics are fantastic. This is a really cool game on the Vita. Here is Rainbow Moon. This is a tactical RPG that leans pretty heavily on dungeon crawling, but I wanted to highlight this one here because it's one of the few limited run games that came with a full color manual. Most of them don't, but this one definitely does. It's pretty cool. Here is Dragon Fantasy, the Black Tome of Ice. This is an RPG that originally came out on mobile, but then Sony commissioned an updated 16-bit version for the Vita and PlayStation 3. Here is Mystery Chronicle One-Way Heroics. This is an action RPG that is a spin-off of the Mystery Dungeon series. And with this game, we have the first 10 releases from Limited Run. All right, moving on. Like I said, we're going fast here because we have over 50 games to get to. So this next one is called Thomas Was Alone, and this is a puzzle platforming game that really gets back to the basics when it comes to the graphics, almost like the Atari 2600. But don't let those graphics fool you because this is way more fun than it looks, and it got great reviews at launch. Another game with a long title. This is Stealth Inc. A Clone in the Dark Ultimate Edition. This is a stealth game that describes itself as a mix of, say, Metal Gear Solid meets Super Meat Boy. And speaking of stealth games and games that have really cool covers, this is Volume. So this is another stealth game that is very much inspired by the 3D Metal Gear Solid. And just like in Metal Gear Solid, you spend a lot of time trying to avoid guards, dogs, and security turrets. Has pretty good graphics too. Here's a game that I'm very excited to see get a second life. That is Oddworld Stranger's Wrath HD. Played this originally on the OG Xbox. Love this game. Very different than the other Oddworld games because this is technically first person, but you also go into third person. It's got platforming. It just has a different vibe. It's very much more of a first person shooter. Really like it a lot, and it's cool it got a physical Vita release. Here is Lone Survivor, the director's cut. This is a post-apocalyptic survival horror game that I'm sure that Reggie probably loves. Curses and Chaos, another game that has a really cool cover. This is a single-screen, wave-based arena brawler. I talked about Aqua Kitty DX on my Switch video, and it's cool because it's been out on a bunch of different systems, including the Vita, now in physical form. And I like this game a lot because if you're a fan of the old school arcade game Defender, you're gonna love this one because it's very much like that, but just updated for today. The Swapper is a puzzle/platformer. Now in this game, what you do is you create clones of yourself, and then you can swap your conscience between those clones to help solve puzzles. This is a highly rated game and very recommended. It's super cool. The Swindle is known as a steampunk stealth game set in London. In this game, you play as a thief, but be warned, this game is known for having permadeath, so watch out. Here's a series I'm very familiar with, that is Runner 2 Limited Edition on the Vita. I love these games. They're so much fun. Basically, they're auto-running platforming games, and they function almost like rhythm games where you're just tapping, dodging, ducking, smashing. It's super cool. I beat the first game, played the second one here, and then also the new one is out on Switch, so I had to pick that one up as well. Moving right along, it's a game called Nova 111. So this is a sci-fi adventure game where you cruise around in an orange ship searching for lost scientists. Now I have to warn you, this game may look simple, but man, it gets tough later. I remember hanging out with Doug, who is one of the co-founders of Limited Run Games, a couple years ago, right before they were going to announce that they had the publishing rights for Ray Gigant on the Vita, and he was super excited. He loves this game. So what is it? Well, it's a dungeon crawler JRPG with turn-based battles. But what makes it cool is that it's often compared to Bravely Default, another JRPG that people love. Here are two releases from Limited Run that I'm putting together. You of course have Mutant Muds Deluxe, as well as its sequel, Super Challenge. These are highly rated 2D platforming games that you must try if you like this genre. They're fantastic. Next up is Risk of Rain. This is a platformer with randomly generated levels and objects. The thing about this game is that the difficulty level automatically rises every 5 minutes, so there's a real sense of urgency here. Broken Age is a game that a lot of you are going to be familiar with. That's because it was a huge deal when this game first got announced because this is an old school point-and-click adventure game from Double Fine and Tim Schafer. I bet many of you are surprised that it even came out on the Vita, and even more of you that it got a physical release. How cool is that? And here we have Deemo, The Last Recital. This is a highly rated rhythm game. What makes it so cool and kind of unique is that it's very atmospheric. You know, it's funny because so many of us are used to playing Rock Band or Guitar Hero. They're very colorful, very cartoony, but this one just has a whole other vibe. So it's a really cool game if you like rhythm games like this. Definitely check it out. Here we have Bard's Gold, although I always want to say Bard's Tale. That's the game that I always think of when I see Bards. But here's Bard's Gold. This is another roguelike platformer. And like so many of these other games, at the end of the dungeon, you have to upgrade your character to progress, to get better, that sort of stuff. Ah yes, Dariusburst Chronicle Saviours. You guys know that I love my shooters, and this is a great horizontal shoot 'em up. So technically, this is an enhanced port of the arcade game Another Chronicle. This is highly rated and very well made. If you love these kind of games, check it out. Oceanhorn, Monster of Uncharted Seas. This was a game that I originally played, I believe, on the iPad, and I gotta be honest with you, it feels just like old school Zelda. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because especially back then, there weren't a lot of really high quality Zelda-like clones, especially on mobile. So it's cool to see a Vita version here and then also a physical version. If you haven't checked this game out and you like Zelda, especially the old school ones, give it a shot. All right, moving right along here. Hope you guys are still with me as we go through all of these limited run Vita releases. I have to say that Plague Road probably has one of my favorite covers. It looks so damn cool. And as you can see here, it is a roguelike, turn-based strategy game. Let's keep rolling with the RPGs here. This is a Kemco JRPG called Asdivine Hearts. Thing is, these retro-style RPGs definitely have their hardcore following, and it's cool to see this get a physical release. RPGs, RPGs, RPGs. Yes, the Vita is home to so many RPGs, both big name and also small. This, of course, is Ys Origin, which is a very popular JRPG series. I'm actually playing the 8th game in the series right now on the Switch. But here's Origin. This is a prequel to the previous games. Mecho Tales here with one of my favorite covers, another great one. I love that stained glass look that they got going on there, very unique. So this game is a platformer that feels like a mix of the 2D Rayman games as well as maybe a little bit of Mega Man. And as you can see, it's very colorful. I don't know if you remember, about a year ago, the publisher .emu flew all the way from France to Seattle to hang out in my game room. At the time, they sat on my couch and they showed me the new Wonder Boy game, but they also brought Windjammers. They were so excited to show me Windjammers because they are the ones that took it from the arcade and are porting it to modern consoles. This is a really popular arcade sports game. People still play it competitively today. It's definitely awesome. Check it out. Here's a game called La-Mulana EX. This is a platform adventure game designed to look like a late 80s computer game. Here are two games I put together because they're part of the same world, but they actually play very differently. The one on the left, SteamWorld Dig, is a 2D platforming digging game similar to Dig Dug if Dig Dug was a platformer. And then the one on the right is very different from that, SteamWorld Heist. That actually is a turn-based strategy shooter game. I had so many people contact me telling me I had to check out Rock Boshers when that first came out because this is right up my alley. So here, of course, we have on the Vita Rock Boshers DX. This is a twin stick shooter, but as you can see here, it's designed to look like it would have come out in 1987 on, say, the ZX Spectrum or maybe even the Commodore 64. And then here we have Skullgirls, the second Encore, and to be honest, there is a bit of controversy with this. I didn't follow it closely other than to know that it took a little bit longer than most people expected. Again, I don't really pay attention to the details. I do know, though, that this is a fantastic fighting game. People absolutely love it, and what's cool about this is, as you can see here, it comes with a really, really nice manual. Full color, it has character descriptions. It's pretty awesome. All right, we're moving on here. This is Claire, the extended cut. This is a 2D pixel graphic / survival horror game. It's not the most original, but it does have a really good story. Fallen Legion, Flames of Rebellion. This is an action RPG, and as you can see here, it looks very similar to some of those Vanillaware games like Dragon's Crown. Revenant Saga. Here we have another Kemco JRPG. Although, again, this one mixes up a little bit because it is very old school feeling, but it has a mix of Super Nintendo and then also PlayStation 1 graphics and gameplay. So as you'll notice here, when you go into combat, then it looks like the PlayStation 1, but everywhere else in the game, it looks more like a old school 16-bit JRPG. The Bit Trip Limited Edition. Now, if you're not familiar with this series or this particular release here, it is a collection of 6 games, and I gotta be honest with you, some of them I like more than others. So, not sure what to say about this. To be honest, again, out of this series, I actually like the Runner series the most, but 6 games for one price? Sure. Now, if you guys watched my Switch Hidden Gems video probably a couple months ago, I mentioned Skyforce on the Switch. And here it is on the Vita, and I have to say that this series is one of my all-time favorite top-down shooters. These are so good. These are so good. Oh, man. Just definitely check them out if you like these kind of games. Oh, boy. I'm going to totally butcher this name. I completely apologize. I think it's called Croylure Sigma? Croylure Sigma? Oh, man. I'm sorry. I should be embarrassed. But all right, what is this game? Well, it's an indie hack and slash game. And the thing to know about it is that it's fairly standard, although it has really nice graphics and cool anime characters. Here's a game you might be familiar with. This is Oddworld Munch's Odyssey HD. That's because this is a sequel to the original Gabe's Odyssey. And as you can see here, it's got a nice Vita port. But here's a game that you might not be familiar with, at least I wasn't initially, that is called Factotum 90. That's because this game originally got its release on the Wii U, and I don't think a lot of people played it there, although it's too bad because actually it's a really cool puzzle game. Basically, you're trying to exit the level by manipulating the objects in that environment. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Portal, a little bit. Definitely a brain teaser and something a little different. Nurse Love Addiction. What do I say about this? What do I say? Okay, I'm gonna keep this simple. It's a visual novel, it's about a nursing school, and it contains love. Moving on. Oregon Trail Complete Edition on the Vita. And yes, this is a zombie version of the classic 1980s Oregon Trail game. Now, the reason why it's called Complete Edition is because over time, the developer has actually been adding more and more stuff to this. Originally, Oregon Trail was a fairly simple game, but they've been adding more story elements, and so that's what you get here. I remember Reggie talking about this game Home in one of our previous pickups videos, and at the time, I really didn't know that much about it, but of course now that I have it on the Vita here, I've learned that this is considered one of the better pixel-style survival horror games ever made. It seems like the two things that make this really cool, one is that you have complete control over the story and how it turns out, and the other thing is they put a lot of time and effort into the audio. So this is one of those games, if you're into survival horror games, you're going to want to wear some headphones. Here we have a game called Siralim. This is a randomly generated roguelike RPG. The idea here is that you defend a kingdom by taming and fighting over 300 monsters. Here we have Antiquia Lost. I think I'm saying that right. I sure hope so. And like so many other times here, this is a fantasy JRPG, again from Kemco. I mentioned it before, but if you love your JRPGs, you need to have a Vita because there are so many on this system. It's absolutely crazy. All right, well, that's a quick look at the first 50 plus games that Limited Run has put out in physical format on the PlayStation Vita. Now, before I made this video, I actually reached out to Doug, who is a friend of mine. He, like I mentioned in the video, he is one of the founding members of Limited Run Games. And I asked him, I was just kind of curious. I'm like, hey, are you guys done with the Vita? You know, because I wanted to know for this video, kind of to tell you guys. And he said, hell no. He is such a big fan of the system. He is going to put out new physical releases for as long as he can. And that is all right with me. I love physical media, as you guys know, as you look around my game room, because, you know, it should be obvious, but these games used to be download only, and now they are physical. I can play them for the next 10, 20, 30 years, no problem. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. So obviously in this video, I just covered the Limited Run Vita releases, but they have released so many PlayStation 4 games, it's crazy. So if you'd like to see me do a video on that, please let me know down in the comments below. That could be epic as well. Again, it's amazing how many games Limited Run has put out. They are like a machine. It's very impressive. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Have a great day.